Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media questions 7 days a week. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Cindy, what do we have?
Our first one today is from Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA, and on today's panel. How do you handle senior management or clients with make it look like the Super Bowl expectations, but without the budget?
I go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I always push for doing the best that we can, or give the best product that we can, given the resources that have been made available for us. That be that the budget in terms of time and also money. If what the client is requesting isn't possible with given the time frame and the budget allocated, then we're transparent to them, like, okay, that's a great idea. This is how much it would cost, because without, things have a hard cost. Like, we're not going to give away, bring Lectrosonics and sound devices wireless if their budget is a Rode Wireless Go. So we always are realistic in terms of what we are capable of delivering, given what the resources that are given to us.
Good, Chris.
We're a post company, and we try to spend money where people will see it. And I think that a lot of times in our industry, Mickey just mentioned, one type of mic versus another. Clearly they sound different, but do they sound different enough that the client appreciates the money spent? Sometimes you need to save money for post. That's kind of what we do. And a lot of times it's really just a battle of managing those expectations. And I think the real question, Guy, is what are the, I'll say tricks, and that sounds devious. What are the techniques, and I'd love to hear it from Alex, of making people realize that their budget is oftentimes, not always, oftentimes an artificial number that somebody made up. I mean, I always point to, movies that went, 100 million over budget. It's like, why is it they can go over budget and I can't? What is the limitation, and why can't we do this the right way?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times, a little bit to what Mickey said is that, especially when we have hard costs connected to something, a lot of times we will just tell them this is how much it costs to do this. Like, this is, to do that. And if they want something specific, if, say they make it look like the Super Bowl, okay, what part of the Super Bowl do they want it to make it look like? Because they may be, when they say that, they may, because we have people will point to something, I really want it to look like this show. They can't do that show, but what part of that show do they really like? Maybe we can figure out a way to give them, because to get back to what you're saying, there's something there that's calling to them. What is that thing that they like? Out of that, is it the graphics? Is it because there's a lot of things, like if you show me a TV show with graphics, for most TV shows, not the Super Bowl, but for most TV shows, if you show me the graphics, I can give you something that looks kind of like them, and it'll work pretty closely if you give me a little time to put it together. And a lot of clients are happy with that. But it is important to kind of figure out what your clients, like and don't like, and it's figuring out what's important to them, because usually, to your point, Chris, they don't notice a bunch of stuff there that we would notice. Like, oh, I see that what they're doing there, and that would take this, this, and this, but they don't notice that at all. When they said they wanted high quality, that's not what they were saying. They were saying something else that they thought was, this is so a key is to really ask the questions of figuring out what dial could you turn that would make this, feel better for them. And little things that we did is that, we moved very quickly to Super 35 sensors. All of our stuff, when we did it, it was 2012. So we stopped using much of anything. Well, 2013, we stopped using anything really below Super 35 sensors for almost anything that we did. You'd be surprised at how that subtle change made everybody else that they hired look like not good. All the other broadcast partners that they had that were 2/3 inch chips and 1/2 inch chips with EX1s and, little PTZs and everything else, the client couldn't put their finger on why. They didn't know why all of our stuff looked better than the other stuff. They just knew that ours looked better, and so the key is to look at but those are like little things, that you can do. Buying a seater made a big difference for us when we did it, because suddenly there was all these live events that didn't have the projector fans, so which they weren't used to hear. They were used to hearing this kind of hum from everything else. Getting really, really good at doing an auto mix made a big difference. Using really big light sources. Everyone they were working with had these little ENG light sources that the news guys came in from, and I brought in 2 4x4s, and we put a silk over it, and suddenly everybody looked amazing, but none of that. So the key is none of that was expensive. That wasn't it was little things that we would do that made huge differences. And so knowing our job is to know where those things are, like what thing to pull that would do that. Now the other advantage is if you invest in hardware, like I for a period of time, I had 35 ATEM switchers and 40 HyperDecks and 25 full size Teranexes. like I just had racks of stuff, and so I could just throw extra stuff at it, and it didn't cost me anything to do that. And I would do that all the time, and I would over deliver all the time. I never was trying to checklist off, unless I didn't have very much of it. But I had. I had 2 Axient systems, and so if I didn't have them booked out, I would send another one as a backup, or I'd do other things or whatever. All those things I'd figure out, because what would happen is that they would get. A lot of times I would throw extra stuff in the boxes so that I could figure out on site what they liked and didn't like, and then the next time I didn't have to send it all. I had a bunch of, but I would be bringing a truck with 4 or 5 extra cases of stuff the first time I worked with a client to kind of pick things out. Now, that's not something most people can do because they don't own all the equipment. 10,000 square foot warehouse full of equipment, you can do a lot of things. But that was our advantage, was that, and I think a lot of our clients, when we stopped doing that, when we moved away from that altogether, I think a lot of them stopped streaming as much because it was just painful, because going back to another vendor was pretty hard because almost nobody else was doing that. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, a lot of good points there. Although I have to disagree with giving gear away for free, because in some circles that would be seen as undercutting, and communities
I didn't interact with the community. Like, the funny thing about me is that I didn't even know anybody else that did what I did. I didn't, all I knew are the vendors that I hired. I didn't know anybody else in the community. I didn't have any interaction with them. And I was kind of just completely focused on client services, and again, all I cared about was that they were happy, but I didn't even know what other people were charging. I didn't know, didn't know anything,
But we knew you were there. We knew you were there. I was following all the stuff you were doing. I was like, how does he show up with all that damn gear? What the heck?
We were completely focused on the client experience, and not focused on, I didn't hire anybody. I mean, I hired very few people from the greater community as well, because it was all Pixelcore members, old Pixelcore members and people that I'd worked with 20 years, and then union. That was, we brought people in, so there was not really any. I hear what you're saying, Mickey. But my job was, at the time, was to produce the best. All I cared about was there was an art form called a live stream, and I was trying to produce that art form, and the clients were paying me to do that. So it wasn't as much a business as it was a thing that I loved, that I enjoyed doing. And I had this big sandbox to do it in. But the clients, but I did charge for my hardware. It's not like I always gave away free hardware. I just had a lot more than, I would tend to bring a lot more than what they were renting. And it absolutely was, I was a little company, and it was absolutely my competitive advantage was that I had an enormous amount of resources that I could put to bear at a level that no one else could do. And that was, I didn't see it as, you could see it as undercutting. I would see it as being competitive. Yeah. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, but yeah, certainly, just to support that, do the best you can with the resources. Like, say if the motion graphics artist is still working on the stuff, then if there's an NFL game style graphic that they want to imitate, then yes, provide new directions to your motion graphics artist. Same deal with like even shots. I don't know in what context you're asking about this guy. Like if this for I'm assuming this is for live broadcast. If there's another shot they want to do and you have the Steadicam up that's there, and you can add a shot to their list that they have to take, then yeah, reassign positions for the Steadicam after segment 4. Move Steadicam up to the other location. So try to work within that and be flexible. Again, within the resources that have been provided to you. Difficult. Fenwick earlier touched on sound being difficult to grasp because oftentimes with sound, clients only start to appreciate the say perhaps better equipment or better operators when things start to go wrong. And that's sort of really tough on our side on the sound, the audio side of things. But there are times where you really have to put your foot down, wherein like, no, if I don't get antennas placed in that location, do not expect a clean broadcast. I would advise them to not push through with this run of show because I don't have RF coverage there. And I would really have to put my foot down. There are things like that wherein like it's just physics. You cannot get around it, guys. But yeah, it's difficult on the sound side of things to persuade people to allocate time and money for it when they haven't seen it fail.
Yeah, and the to get back to one of the things Mickey said that I want to agree with is that you do have to be careful of what you make available and where that resource is going to come from. If you look at a client for the future, we had one where I spec'd a camera up. This is someone that was in another country. It was the client wanted to do something in Europe, and so the folks I hired are very good. And I asked for a handheld camera op. And they thought it'd be great to bring a Steadicam because they had one and they didn't charge me for it. And the problem was then the client wanted a Steadicam all the time, because it's great. So then from then on, this new spec had occurred that was Steadicam, and that's when I had to talk them down into in the next job I showed them a Steadicam and a Ronin 40 so that they could see the difference, and they decided that they couldn't tell the difference between the Ronin 40 and the Steadicam for what we were doing. And so then I was able to kind of take them off the ledge of like, let's go back to Ronins as opposed to me having to hire a Steadicam operator every single show, which I can't afford. Yeah, go ahead. Or they can't afford. Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, there was a failure recently on a show, not my show, but somebody in the communities, and it was a pretty big deal. CEO went dark. Literally, the venue went dark, and there started to be all these questionings, and lawyers are involved, and it's a big deal. So a piece of gear failed, and so it just got me thinking: where are you putting that in your spreadsheet as far as generator backup? In this case, I believe it was a DMX controller that they were able to replace, but it should have been wired a certain way with a backup on the ground, so they didn't have to go up to the truss, and it's just like an ordeal. So it just got me thinking when I'm doing a spreadsheet, and I'm like, all right, labor's X, markup is this. When do you start to say backup generator, backup DMX, backup LED video wall, backup video processor, because these things fail?
A lot of times what we do is we want the client to say no. So we'll tell them this is what we recommend that you do. And so we don't the mistake that we can make as vendors is to make decisions for the budget decisions for the client, saying they don't want to pay for that or they can't pay for that or whatever. I recommend what they should do. And if they say we can't afford it, I can say, well, we can take these things out and this is the risk of that happening. But I'm not going to try to cut corners for them. Like I will tell them, this is the way this should be done, and you should have these. Now, I don't know if I would tell them to get a backup LED because that's not really practical, but I would tell them the risks of LEDs, which I've seen. I've seen enough risks of LEDs. If a client puts up an LED wall for an event, I will tell them that there are issues. If the wall is too low, if it's below 9 feet, the cameras are going to be affected, the live stream is going to be affected. It's going to, no matter what they do, they can, unless they have a 0.9 wall and they're more than 10 feet away, it's going to affect the stream. And they just need to understand that they're making a creative decision that's technically going to negatively impact the stream. There's no way around it. And then the other thing that we tell them is that once you have an LED wall up there, it's really hard to fix. When we have projectors, we have 2, 3, 4. There's some companies that have up to 4 projectors at pointing at the same screen, so that they're super bright, but any one of them could drop and you wouldn't notice, and so you don't have the same backup with LEDs. Power is a problem with LED. Incredible problem with LED walls is power. They are, you have these huge generators. I won't do a major show without a generator. Like I won't, like without two sources of power. Like I just will tell you can't, like as soon as you get to a certain height, like I'm just like, you can't do that. You have to have a primary and a backup, and then we UPS everything to give us time to switch over and, everything else. But I've had shows where we had one in the Excel in London where the power went out in the building. And because all of my stuff was on safely on UPS, I have a picture somewhere. You see this little island of lights, and the client came over and said, "What happened to the stream?" I'm like, "Stream's still streaming. We'll be right back. Slide up." And they're like, and I'll tell you, that's when the clients go, "That's why we hire you." Like and took them a half an hour to come back up, but the stream was, we're playing videos and doing stuff to keep everybody happy and everything else. And again, some of that stuff I don't tell. I mean, like I don't itemize the UPSs, but I put them in everywhere. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I know we've beat this question to death, but
great question.
To Alex's comment about letting the client say no, many years ago, I was speccing a job and I had, it was a live event that we wanted to record. The client wanted to record it. And so I had a couple of recorders and a tape op. And the client was nitpicking the budget beforehand. He goes, "Do I really have to have a tape op? Can't somebody just reach over and hit record?" And I said, "Well, here, let me ask you this. Do you absolutely positively have to record it? Or would it just be kind of nice if you had a recording?" He goes, "Oh, no, it's got to be recorded." "Then we need a tape op." Because that's all this guy's going to do is he's going to absolutely make sure that you have a recording. But if it would be kind of nice if you had a recording, then sure, I can reach over and hit record.
Yeah. Next question.
Here's a question from Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. Rode dropped a new RODECaster Video S at $500. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Alex.
Looks pretty cool. You can pre-order it. So basically, this is a smaller version of what they released earlier in the year, which is about a little over double the price of this one. I think that one was $1,100 or $1,200. So has less I/O. I like that they went for a more simplified design than the ATEM, so a lot less buttons. Your typical preview program bus there. I like that it has this little LCD screen so you can access some of the onboard settings. Cool thing on the back is I like that it has balanced XLR audio jacks on there, and they give you not one but two headphone monitoring outputs, and they're full-size 1/4 inch, which is really nice. And the more interesting thing that I noticed here is that they actually say that you can connect a compatible USB Rode microphone and a compatible web camera. So you can, in theory, use all three additional HDMI inputs for cameras, but then you can also have a fourth camera potentially. And they have an article here which has a list of all these compatible Elgato, Logitech, OBSBot cameras, even some Sony cameras and stuff like that. So it's really, really interesting that allows you to expand it in that way.
Yeah, Alexander, I think that other webcam comes in as this button E. So there's 4 HDMI inputs plus the button E is what I think it is.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, it seems pretty neat to me. Again, like this is one of these things that it's like, I'll believe it when I see it, because I have many an ATEM that have very nice professional looking, XLR jacks in, and that doesn't mean that they work, and it doesn't mean that the preamps are clean. It's interesting just reading over this site. It's neat that they have NDI. It's neat that they've just taken a completely different approach. The way that they explain things, they're not even trying to adhere to broadcast terminology. This is clearly designed for a different group of people that aren't familiar with the lingo. And all in, I can't say that's a bad thing.
Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri is asking, for dialogue, is the KZ ZS10 Pro still the best in-ear monitor under $100 US?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I think they retail for about $40 US. They're fine for a throwaway. I own a few of these because I bought them just for clients to have for monitoring, but I'm not a huge fan of them. I think for a little more money, I think the Shure SE215s are a much better price. And in fact, not much better price, but a better product. They come in at $99 if you're in the US. That's the SE215 model. And they come in black and clear. And I just think the sound quality is better there. The KZs, I just find they have a really exaggerated high end and an exaggerated low end. I mean, you would never use a $40 IEM for anything critical for listening anyways. The other thing is I just find that they stick out a little too much. They look to me more like a hi-fi in-ear monitor rather than something that's designed to be discreet. And the SE215s fit a little more flush with the ear, kind of like these ones that I have. If I turn my head to the side, you don't really notice them, but those KZs are going to stick out on the side of your head. So if you care about aesthetics, that's something to think about.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I personally, I don't find the KZ ZS10 Pros to sound good at all, and I personally find them, like, as Alexander mentioned, like highly, like overly emphasized low end and high end, so like good old smiley face DJ EQ, and I find it extremely difficult to listen to. So I wouldn't even consider them good, let alone best. I would also recommend the Shure SE215, or if you're in the Sennheiser camp, I would take a look at the Sennheiser IE100. Both are just under $100 US, and you'd be so much happier.
Yeah, go, Jason.
Yeah, plus one on the Sennheisers. I have very expensive custom made IEMs that I do not wear on this stream because they make me look like a horror. Like I just had these giant bulges coming out of my ear, and it just doesn't look good. They sound amazing, but yeah, they're just not a good look.
Yeah, I'm using the S10s right now. I would not mix anything with them. Also, there's a huge difference between the S10s and the S10 Pros. The S10s are super bassy and makes it almost impossible to understand what you're thinking. I find that these ones are very present, and what I like about them is that I can hear noise if I'm making noise in the show, but I don't find them to be accurate at all. But I do use them. And they're relatively inexpensive. And if I need to send them out to somebody, they're $50, and so I have to send things to people at 50. I would say not even up to $100. I need something that I can send out to people or I can throw into a bag that are $50 that sound reasonably good. And they are, but some are usually between $35 and $45. And for that price, I think they're pretty good. Next question.
Next is from Douglas Carmichael. Would an online double conversion UPS like this one reduce audio system noise if power quality is a problem? With a link.
Go ahead, Jason.
The short one-word answer is yes, but it's not the first place I would look. I would first, completely get rid of unbalanced inputs. I would make sure that all of the outlets that I'm plugging things into are balanced and have their own ground. Yes. The short answer is yes, but like not the first place to look.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, if the source of the audio system noise is bad power coming from outside of your system, then yes, a double conversion UPS may help with that. Now, if there is some leakage within your grounding system, then that wouldn't solve it because the components in your system will be tied to the same ground. So that wouldn't fix it on that side of things. But if it's dirty power, like say if you have inconsistencies with the frequency of your power coming in, or if there are other components within your facility or even your neighborhood, if it's within the same transformer, then double conversion could help with cleaning up that noise. You'd still want power conditioning on the way in, and you would also still want to make sure that there's no other source of noise, like as Jason mentioned, the unbalanced connections that may be running in parallel with power lines, for example. If that's in your system, then you have to fix it first. Cleaning the power coming in won't get rid of that. but that would help. And also another thing, I believe the Ethan stuff are all pure sine wave. At least this family of UPSs
They are
all pure sine wave. So that you would want pure sine wave for backup power for an audio system, especially when you're dealing with a lot of analog hardware.
Next question.
Here's one from panelist Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA. Are there old school analog tricks or workflows you still rely on or wish the industry would rediscover?
Jeff.
Guy, I love this question, and I've been thinking about it since I saw it. And there's probably a half a dozen that I can't even, they don't even come to mind because they're just part of your normal workflow. I'm going to throw out two. That's room treatment. And the second big one is microphone technique, especially when you hand a presenter or a moderator or someone a handheld microphone. Got to have them have good technique with that microphone, because people will tend to, they hear themselves loud and they drift down with the microphone because they're trying to control the level themselves. You need them to like keep that in place and let the A1 set the sound in the room.
You can always see someone who's been well trained in mic technique, especially when you're doing events, because someone will sit there. You'll see them right before they walk up. A couple of them will. Someone trains people to do this. They'll tap their chin and then pull out like 2 inches, and they've been trained to do that. You're like, just before they walk out, you see them do this thing where they just train, because that tells them, okay, I know where my mic, my SM58 is, or my Sennheiser or whatever, and it's right there. And then they hold it there like it's like it belongs to them, and it looks a little funny because they get so rigid about it, but it's way better than the other options where they're wandering around with it all over the place. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
That's also a reference to the Everybody Loves Raymond show, where his brother always touches stuff to his chin. I saw Sting actually bring somebody out of the audience once to sing a song with him, and they put up an SM58, and he goes, "If your lips aren't touching it, nobody will hear you." My thing about old school is just, as I get older, I really appreciate all the things that I've lived through, and how many times and you've done this, Guy, where you get in a situation and you go, "Oh yeah, summer of 1991, we were setting up, and I know what's wrong." And you pull something out of the hat, and the young kids are like, "How did you know to go to that?" It's like, been there, done that. It's like it's so reassuring. But I think in general, to the question, I think clear, logical, and poignant troubleshooting techniques where you don't go off in the weeds and you don't get lost. It's like, it's not going to be that. You're wasting your time. Start at the source. Let's go to here. And I always go to the phrase, stop trying to fix the problem, but solve the problem.
Yeah. And I think what's so important is understanding what you're actually trying to do. Like, what are we trying to do here? Not how are you doing it right now, and how do we fix what you're doing right now? What are we trying to do? And let's rebuild that pipeline sometimes. And usually my version of rebuilding that pipeline is, let's remove like 8 things that you were doing. like let's just take out a whole bunch of this stuff, because you were, the biggest problem that I see with younger folk, or everybody, is the temptation to find exotic ways to do things when you can find elegant ways to do them. There's what Jeff talked about, room treatment and the physics of your microphone are the 2 biggest things. And then you can have all these other weird things that you can do with your microphone. But if you fix those 2 problems, almost all the microphones sound good. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I'm going to go from the live sound route. So it's really interesting because, we started out in the world of analog, and then we went to digital, and in the early days, digital was pretty rough sounding, and then it got pretty good, and then it got really good. But even on the high-end consoles, like you see people working on these Digico consoles where, these are like $100,000 consoles, but a lot of live sound engineers have started incorporating analog back, and they've noticed that the improvements, that last mile improvement, that, a lot of them are now working in hybrid workflows where they have these digital consoles and they're converting the digital audio via MADI into analog, and they're going through a bunch of outboard processing. A lot of these guys that I know have Rupert Neve analog stuff there. They're adding saturation on the vocals and saturation into their mix bus, and it's just that last mile that just adds that little extra something to give that whole mix that glue, that weight that a lot of these guys also came from the studio recording world, so they're trying to reproduce the album, and all these little outboard pieces can just add that extra little bit of polish.
Go, Jeff.
It's kind of a moral of the story if you go to guitar players and you find their settings of distortion and effects when they're playing, practicing in their bedroom, and then you put them on stage, you have to dial everything back to like 25% of that. When you start putting them in a live situation with a band or in a recording situation, the distortion that sounds great alone, dial it back. And that's the moral here. It's like simplify. You want good sources, and we haven't talked about what's ahead of the room and the microphone, and that's actual compelling content. But that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're doing. Once you have good, compelling content, get a good microphone, get a good room, simplify. That will solve troubleshooting problems. That will solve sound, all of those things.
Good, Mickey.
Yeah, I think everyone gave great points. I think going back to the basics, as Jeff mentioned earlier, acoustics, your environment, microphone placement, are really very important. And then along those same lines, signal flow and gain staging, like again, just thinking mostly on the sound side of things, signal flow and gain staging, like many don't keep those in mind, where, okay, I have this signal going through here. How do I maintain good signal to noise ratio, or even optimize, like say, even if it's a fully digital path after the A to D conversion, within that digital signal flow, how do you optimize your levels across the whole path? People like, a lot of even audio interfaces now have like auto gain, and people don't think about like gain staging anymore with that. And that's like, if someone finds themselves in trouble, they don't know how to troubleshoot and fix the issue, because like they grew up just using auto gain, or never thinking about gain staging in the first place. So, and another thing that I think many newer production practitioners don't do as much anymore is just planning. Period. Like just thinking about the day, the production day, planning all the way from call times. Like I myself, like I work on a lot of TV commercials. They'd call me at like 4 a.m., 6 a.m., and I don't roll sound until like 3 in the afternoon, and then they would end up having to pay overtime for my crew, if they just planned and like, so, okay, in the call sheet they know they're only going to need sound at 3 p.m. Then call me in after lunch. Don't have to pay overtime then. Simple things like that, like just planning things out, I think have somehow been forgotten.
Yeah, I guess the number one analog thing that I would underline, I think that Mickey just touched on, is time. like giving yourself more time to load in, to plan, to build, to do all those things. Time is probably the most important piece of many productions that we don't give enough to. I just had a production over the weekend. It was a volunteer production. We were all doing it, and I wanted to load in the day before. People were like, I think it's not a very complicated. Well, we could load it in the same day. No one on my team thought that, but somebody else was mentioning it, and are you sure you can't just load it in the morning? I'm like, I really want to load it in the day before to see. And it was still tight, and it would have been tighter. Next question.
Paul Valhus comes to us from Austin, Texas. I want to put gaff tape on canvas and plastic cooler bags that I use for my gear and write on it with pencil or marker. What type works good for labeling like this?
Go, Jeff.
I would go to not gaff tape, but to artist tape, like It's white, usually, or we see it in audio world as console tape. Better for marking things up and leaves less residue over time.
Yeah, I still use. I mean, I definitely use gaff tape, but I don't know what kind of canvas you're using. I mean, I use the Eagle Creek cubes for almost everything. You know, they're all the same size. They all interact with each other. They all you can build little systems of them. And so, but I definitely put gaff tape on them often. But I use black tape with silver Sharpies. It's my thing. Then I usually know that it's mine because almost nobody else does that. Next question.
This one's from David Brady in New York, New York. Wondering if anyone on the panel has experience with Telos Infinity for comms. If so, can you share your opinion?
You know, I've had some conversations with Telos about those, and they look really good. They're kind of like halfway between a ClearComm system or whatever and Unity. You know, like they have hardware and they have a cloud infrastructure, and it looks like it should all work great. And I just haven't had the opportunity to put it into place. When I'm doing stuff on generally when we're on site, we're usually using a Riedel or a ClearComm system. And when we're just doing kind of virtual stuff, we're using Unity or SpaceComms. And those are the only ones. Those are the only worlds that I've lived in. I just haven't had an excuse to do the Telos one. So hopefully we'll be able to do more with it in the future. Next question.
This one comes to us from the QR code from Lon Keller in Moorhead, Minnesota, USA. Does anyone have experience using Jumper with Final Cut Pro? Any thoughts on using it for a small team all connected to a Jellyfish media server?
Yeah, I was hoping that, I have to admit, you gave us a Final Cut question. It rolled up, and Chris happens to be out of the room right now. So Jumper here, let's pull this up here. So here's Jumper, and it is I think that it's able to use AI to find things that you're looking for related to those, and I think that we're going to see a lot of this. This is not really AI generation. It's more like what is referred to as utility AI. Like, let me make it easier for you to find the things that you're looking for. It could work really well. I mean, those types of tools, I think, are going to become common in the next 5 or 10 years. Next question.
This one's from Douglas Carmichael. When using unbalanced sources like synthesizers in a controlled studio environment, what are some of the rules of thumb for minimizing the risk of excess noise?
Go, Jeff.
Keep your unbalanced lines as short as possible. So you want to convert to balanced immediately out of the synths using a direct box.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. I always use direct boxes. I mean, if you're just in a home studio environment and you're trying to keep costs down, I suppose you could just use your unbalanced patch cables, keep those cable lengths as short as possible. I do like, there's a couple of DI boxes I will recommend. So if you get into the world of synthesizers, often it's a deep rabbit hole you can go down because you never just own one synthesizer. So you may want to start planning for the future, like this Radial Pro D8. And so this has 8 inputs here, so 1/4-inch inputs, balanced XLR outputs. It's a passive device as well. And then on the higher end, a lot of people really like the sound of these Rupert Neve 8-channel DIs because they have the Rupert Neve output transformers. So if you're looking for something that'll give you a little bit of color, those are the way to go. They also have a slightly higher input in terms of like the headroom, what they can accept, plus 20 or 22 dBu on the input side of things. So they can take a really, really, really loud signal going into the input stage. So those are really nice.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, exactly what they said. Either plug into a DI as quickly as possible with the shortest cable as possible, and feed that into your preamp, or use a short cable to plug directly. If you have any rack mount DIs or preamps, like I like Avalon and Universal Audio LA610s. If you use those kinds of hardware, then I would try to avoid having to go through an additional DI box and go directly into the high Z of those boxes. But yeah, rule of thumb: keep your unbalanced lines as short as possible.
Next question.
Sam Downey in Bristol is asking, is anyone aware of the Exploring the Cinematic Hemisphere for Orchestra from APL? It's all about microphone techniques for recording the space and especially for immersive sound. It's a really good free resource for all music pros.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So I've poked around on this site. I haven't downloaded their files, but they basically did this massive recording session, I think in Erlenhurst. I'm going to try and show you. Their site has a cool photo. No, you're not going to see that. So you can go to the site that he links there. Basically, they did immersive microphone techniques on Orchestra, and they did, I'm not going to say all of them because people are coming with new ones all the time, but they did many, many, many different immersive techniques all at the same time, and you can pull up and download these files. And so remember that each immersive mic technique may be, 12 microphones in and of itself. So we've gone from a stereo pair to something that's going to be 7.1.4 and probably not a .1, but at least height channels and 7 all around in various ways. So it's a way to go and compare those. So really, really cool site. When I get some time, download all these files and listen to them.
Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, USA, and on today's panel is asking, a client requested a chase edit for fast turn. May I show what I learned about growing files?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and I think we'll see more of this in the future. I know some people do this with expensive stuff in the cloud. There's also expensive software that you could get to do this, like Media Looks. So the idea is to take a file that's coming from, let's say, a venue remotely, and you take this file and you just want to do highlight clips. So you have an editor on site, and you want to bring those files in. So Media Looks, another one, Softron. These are like $600 pieces of software. I wanted to show you what I came up with last night because there's stuff that you could do with Adobe Premiere. So I'd actually download and install Premiere. So here's what I found is you go into vMix, which is only $60 a month, and you can do a record as an FFmpeg, and you change the codec to VC3, MXF. And now when you hit record, that file is one that is capable of going into Premiere, and then in the preferences, you change your media to growing files, automatically refresh growing files, and I put it here for 10 seconds. So now when I import that media, when I import the growing file, so this one's called this one here. So I'll say open, and when I initially drag it into the timeline, what's going to happen is it'll only be as long as from that initial start. So right now this thing's only 16 seconds long, but if we were to go back over to vMix and make some kind of change, like pick a different shot, eventually that will catch up. So it's growing. Right now, this one's 16 seconds. Actually, let's see. Let's go to the end of the timeline. 22 seconds. And as it grows, we just can keep following along and keep chasing it. So you could be making subclips, or you can be, marking in and out points of the highlight. So if you were to open up that clip, you can scrub through it, and you could mark it in, mark it out, make another timeline, and you're cutting this thing along the way. So really cool workflow for somebody that just wants to grab stuff and put it up for social. But Premiere and I tried this in Resolve. I can get it to work in Resolve. I'm not sure what it is that you need to do growing files and have it work in Resolve with that workflow, but Premiere, it works wonderfully. So just in case anybody else ever wants to do this or gets that request, just thought it'd be helpful to share the learnings.
That's great. Fantastic. Next question.
Our next one comes in from James Fosslian in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Started using Heos audio streaming in-house. Anyone understand how to sync audio across zones?
I have never used Heos. So I'm assuming I wasn't able to quite pull it up here, but I assume this is a kind of an in-house speaker system that is jumping around. But you've actually asked a question about something that I've never heard of before. So and since there's no other hands up, I don't think anybody else here has heard of it before either. You're ahead of us. So James, your homework is to do it. Come on the show and tell us how it works and what you think of it. Oh, here's Mickey's got something. Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, I'm familiar with Heos from Denon AV receivers, and I know with some receivers, depending on how many outputs it has, you can set up 2 or 3 zones within a single AV receiver. Of course, that would take up channels from your, say, if your receiver is capable of Atmos, you'd have to take up a bunch of your amplifier channels to be able to build additional like stereo zones. So like if you have a patio that has outdoor speakers and you want to be able to play music out there, you'd have to eat up some of your amplifier channels. From what I recall, you would have to configure that within the AV receiver for split up the zones, and then within the Heos app, you can name those zones so that you can say like, okay, this is the full 5.1 system of your home theater system, and then these 2 other channels will be your patio. These 2 other channels would be, I don't know, the pool speakers. And you can build those zones there. And then when you're playing music, you do have to use the Heos app to be able to set up what plays out to which zone. So you can have a single person playing, like airplaying to the receiver, and then you can select, okay, I want this to play out in these multiple zones. And if you have multiple Denon receivers, I don't know if Heos is limited to just Denon, but I've only seen them in Denon AV receivers, like my dad's home theater system. You can, if you have multiple of them, you can also group them together or play across multiple zones with those multiple AVRs.
Next question.
This one's from JJ McKenna in Scavo, California, U.S. Does it make sense for office hours to have an upcoming events pegboard for upcoming shows or concerts that our membership are running and creating?
I go, Jason.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I'm not sure where it would really belong, but like, the idea of kind of a coffee shop, come to my production, open invitation kind of seems like a neat idea.
I think it's just generally a lot of us are running events all over the world, and I think what I'm guessing is JJ's talking about a pegboard where you can just say, hey, we're doing these events, so people just know that they're existing, not necessarily ours, but there are people in the community doing those events, and I think that would make a lot of sense. I have no idea where it would go or who would build it, but I think it's a great idea. So it has my thumbs up of approval. If we put it somewhere, that'd be great. I don't know where the resources would come from. Next question.
Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas is asking, for those that travel to clients for work, what travel insurance and options do you recommend if you are unable to get there due to challenges beyond your control?
Go with Jason.
This is easily an hour answer. So over the years, I've done various things. The travel stipulations are stated in my contracts usually, and are also just part of my business insurance. The real way to beat this, in the best, Bruce Lee said the best way to block a punch is to not be there. And in this case, take the longest you've ever been delayed, add that, 1.5 or 2, and arrive that early. And then it doesn't really matter how many times you're going to be delayed. You'll get there on time.
Yeah, I think that beyond your control is a complicated discussion. Like I have done events personally on every continent except for Antarctica, traveled 250,000 miles a year, and I have never been late to an event. So like just to be clear, like and this is carrying gear, carrying stuff, carrying everything else. But it goes down to what Jason said, is that I have so many rules about the way I travel. The first rule is that I take the time that it takes to get there and I multiply it by 1.5, and that's how early I have to get there. So that's the minimum. So if I'm 3 hours away, I'm aiming to be there 4.5 hours before the show. If I'm a day away, I'm a day and a half early. Like that's the so like when we go to Japan, if I have to load in on Saturday, I'm arriving on Thursday. And what's great is that if everything goes well, I have and the way to put it a little bit more complicated, the way we stagger gear, a lot of times we don't, in the old days, we didn't have the money to do rocket all the time. And so we would literally check all of our bags, because you could do media rate and everything else. And so we would arrive in Japan with 43 bags, but that team that went there was always 2 people that hung back. And the team that landed had to land before the team that took off had to take off, so that if we lost any gear, that they would run to the warehouse, throw it in the thing, and run out and get on a plane, And so there was like this. There's all these safety systems that we had. Also, little things like if we're checking bags, it has to be when we look at the connection flight, it can be no less than 90 minutes, no more. The layover can be no less than 90 minutes and no more than 3 hours, because if it's just too long, people will break into it. In some countries. so there was all these rules, and our travel teams all paid attention to them and everything else. A lot of those things are like, if I have just a regular meeting, I'm usually at regular meetings. I shouldn't say this because everyone will think about it if they meet with me. But if I'm meeting with a partner or a client, I'm usually, if they are more than a half an hour away, I am usually in the vicinity of that meeting an hour before. I'm paying attention to traffic, and I'm paying attention to a lot of other things. But I know where I'm going to go. Usually Starbucks, but it can be a lot of different places that I can just work. But I set up my day. That's why I don't do many meetings, by the way, because it's a lot for me. But I never am like trying to be there 15 minutes before or 10 minutes before or on time. I'm way ahead, and then I'm usually within a block of them for 1 or 2 blocks for an hour. And then I just saunter in, now I don't get there early, because the only thing that worse than being late is being too early, because it just throws everybody off. It's super annoying to be more than 5 minutes early. So anyway, so those are the kind of things that we do, but be very careful of saying beyond your control, because there's very few things that are truly beyond your control when it comes to your schedule. You may choose to not do those things, but be careful of thinking that they're anything that's beyond your control is also going to get you, and so the more you take under your wing of, I'm going to control this, the better. Next question.
Tony Mobley comes to us from Noonan, Georgia. I am doing hybrid house of worship events at the end of the month. No budget, using 3 iPhones, 15 Pro, 16, and iPhone 16 Pro Max. 2 cameras, 1 audio. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm curious, Tony, if on what exactly you need to be able to deliver. Is this a live stream? Is this like a pre-recorded content where you can just have people just shoot footage and you could cut it together afterwards? It'd be nice to get a bit more detail, and we can work through possible solutions for this.
I'd be curious to see. The hard part is that a lot of times we try to get very aggressive about what we do for these things with no budget and not a lot of other people to help you. I don't know if you have a lot of other people to help you with it in person, but my only thing I would say is to try to keep your elbows in. If you're trying to do too many things, it's really easy for a lot of things to go wrong. And a lot of times, I think that you just want to be careful. I don't know how successful when I say successful, you might get something out the other end, but is it actually watchable? Like, is it something that people are going to want to watch for a long period of time, or is it going to be something? And I think that's a lot of people get pretty aggressive about this. And the other thing I would say that I really think that in general, I'm talking to a couple different house of worships from completely different religions, from 3 different ones, and all 3 of them are different verticals, so to speak. And in all cases, what we're really talking about is building a virtual experience for the virtual audience, and using their space as a studio, but not trying to do both at the same time. It's not a great experience unless you really have the equipment. I mean, if you're TD Jakes and you've got a multi-million-dollar production facility, you can do a hybrid event. But if you don't have that kind of money, I think that you need to think about like whether it makes sense to do it in a hybrid way or build something very specific for the online experience. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas asks, how would you build a Homebrew presidential prompter at the least cost?
Go ahead, Mickey.
So yeah, I if this is like one of the worst failures you can have in a broadcast is the prompter failing, because then if your talent is really reliant on the prompter, then your broadcast or your show goes off the rails. They don't know where to go from wherever that prompter goes down. So there may be reasons why you would want to build your own presidential prompter. Special use cases. Maybe you need it really extra large for some reason. There might be situations where you need to build your own or modify an existing prompter. But I would not skimp on the cost there. I would make sure it's reliable and it works.
Yeah, I don't know why you would do it. Like, I don't know. Like, you do a presidential prompter specifically because you're going to be in front of a lot of people. There's no other reason to use that kind of prompter. Like, because you otherwise just use a regular prompter. In fact, I built prompters with cardboard boxes and a piece of glass that I bought at a local resale, like a local glass place, and I've been able to build prompters from scratch, like literally take the box and you cut a 45-degree slot in it and slide it in and put a monitor underneath it. It'll work. But I don't know why the reason that you build the presidential, and for those that are watching, if you want to know what he's talking about, you have this, this base. And then you have a little piece that goes up, and then you have a mirror here, and the monitor's down here, and the mirror is reflecting it. So it's very low. It's relatively low profile. You'll see them there, and Jason's got a picture of them there. You do those because you're in front of hundreds or thousands of people, and you want to say your speech the way you want to say it. But if you're going to do that in front of hundreds of thousands of people, you should at least just rent the one that makes sense. That renting that is like $500 or something like that. You're not going to, unless you're in front of lots of people all the time. There's no reason to own one of these unless you are doing it all the time. There's plenty of places that'll rent those to you for $500 or $1,000 a day. And so I would think pretty hard about actually building one. If you're doing it for your own office, just use a regular one. It's a lot cheaper. It'll work better, look better. The presidential prompters are actually pretty hard to read from, in my opinion. And then the next thing is to question whether you should be using a prompter at all. It makes sense for politicians and lawyers and CEOs because they oftentimes have legal reasons they have to say it in a certain way. But it almost always reduces the quality of the delivery unless you're really, really good at it. Yeah, go, Jason.
Yeah, I have to reiterate this. I've built prompters. Of all the prompters to build, you don't build one of these. And here's why. Again, like aside from the use case of a podium, the issue here is that you have a very thin piece of glass that has to be perfectly suspended at a perfect angle that is at least about a human height high on a homemade stand. Like that immediately is just a terrible idea.
Next question.
Next one's from Todd Raines in Allen, Texas. StreamYard just released Mars, multi-aspect ratio streaming, where you can stream both 9x16 and 16x9 simultaneously from the same studio. What are your thoughts on this feature and use cases?
We're experimenting with that right now, and I'm actually pretty happy with what we're doing with vMix on Saturdays, what Chad Lafarge and the team has been working on. So I think that the idea of doing both of these definitely could make sense. I have very little experience. I find StreamYard to be very constraining, and so I haven't I don't have much experience with it because I admit I don't know enough about it to give you a hard opinion because I haven't used StreamYard for 4 or 5 years. Like I played with it and was like, no, this isn't what I want. And so I don't know enough about StreamYard today or how much different it is from 5 years ago. And the fact that Bending Spoons bought it makes me less interested. So I don't know. I think that when you go to the playing with both aspects and if it's doing it well for you and it's working well, then I think streaming it, decide where you want to stream it to. I would still do 16:9. There's a vast majority of people watching YouTube now, not vast majority, but a majority now are watching on TVs. And you're getting longer average view time on live. So if you stream 16:9 at a high quality, and it really does have to be high video and high audio quality, we're seeing dramatic changes in average view time on YouTube on when people are watching on a TV. So streaming, I wouldn't stream vertical to YouTube, even though you can. I would stream vertical to TikTok, and TikTok is the big one that I would probably consider. Instagram as well, of course. Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, there is some new stuff from YouTube that was just released within the last month. If you watch, I was trying to look it up and find the little content for creators that they put out. It's an ability that they're rolling out slowly for users to automatically do this out of one stream. So you could send up a 16:9 and it'll slice down the middle and make it 9:16, similar to what we're doing on Saturdays. Although on Saturdays, ours is different because we're using vMix and we're able to do like a talking head on the top and then the question down below, or we could put multiple people. So there's a couple different looks that we've developed. StreamYard's actually really cool. I've been taking a look at it. It doesn't do enough for what I need to do just because I know the power of vMix and some of these other tools. But for normal people, I am blown away. And a couple big clients that I know use it. And I'm just like, you're that big of a company and you're using StreamYard for that. And so if you're interested in it, StreamYard's got some crazy number of users now. It's like 500,000 or a million. It's up there. So it's no joke of a tool. It's definitely worth looking at if you need something simple. But as far as the 9:16 versus 16:9, it's new. So I guess we'll have to see how it plays. But I'll put a link to that content. I'll dig it up real quick for the YouTube one.
Next question.
This one's from Sam Downey in Bristol. I recently bought some Audeze LCD-S20 headphones, but they need more power to drive them as my SSL2 Plus audio interface can't drive them. What DAC can you recommend to get? The MOJO 2 is the one I think to get.
All right, go ahead, Alexander.
Haven't had a chance to look at the specs, but any headphones that are 250 ohms or higher are definitely going to need good headphone amplification. You mentioned you had the SSL2 Plus interface. They've since released the Mark II version of that that interface. It would be more cost effective for you to just replace that interface entirely and go to the MK2. The MK2 has a much improved headphone amplifier. That's not the only feature that they improve, but that is one of the aspects of that interface that they improve. So you may want to take a look at that. I would also highly recommend you go to Julian Krause's YouTube channel because he does these incredibly in-depth reviews and he keeps a chart with rankings of all interfaces and the amount of power that their headphone amplifiers can provide. So it'll give you some sense of which ones are going to be better for high impedance demanding headphones.
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, if this is just for casual consumption of say like listening to music, and you don't need an interface with line inputs or microphone inputs or preamp, I would probably take a look at the RME ADI2 DAC, which has really high quality digital to analog conversion, as well as very, very capable headphone amp that can drive very high impedance headphones.
Thanks so much for the great questions today from our producers. Yet another day, 2,000 something or other in. I don't know exactly what the number is. We should probably put that on the traversal. But anyway, we've done this quite a few times, and we still every single day have questions. Thank you so much to the producers for all those great questions, and of course, thank you to the panelists. We can't do this without you. Great sound, our audio panel, very strong audio panel today. Great Wednesdays are the great day to ask for your audio questions. And so thank you so much for being here. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that makes this possible, of course. This is not something that is easy to put together quickly, and we really appreciate everybody's contribution. Today, if we'd done this in person, let's law like traversal, we would have traveled 27,000 miles. That's 43,000 kilometers, and that is 213 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours. Excellent.
Excellent. Excellent.
I'm going to go off and manage theaters.
Fun.
Must be fun to be in a movie theater completely alone, go bowling.
I did it this week. It's interesting, but you're hearing a lot of test sounds the whole time, so it's like
I was about to say. I bet it's also
noise,
a little kind of
right,
creepy and a little chaotic.
Center,
Left
surround, right surround. LFE.
Mickey, I noticed when you were answering a question, I was sending you stuff on Discord and it was chirping in the background, and I was very tempted to just keep sending, hello, hello, I'm chirping, hello, I'm beeping in the background, chirp, chirp, chirp.
You used to do that with Preto. You used to blow
I
them
used
up.
to
I remember
do it
that.
to
You used to, you would hit them like 20 times. And then